next topic's going to go to Bill Brown, the shooting at 1:15.
All right. Well, basically, when the shots rang out, Mary Wright, for example, she said she called the police immediately. She told this to George and Patricia Nash. Her word, immediately. Barbara Davis heard the shots. She saw the man, cutting across her front yard, unloading a gun, and she heard Markham screaming. She saw the police car and immediately went inside and phoned the police operator to report the shooting to the police. This is in her affidavit. She said immediately. L.J. Lewis was at the Johnny Reynolds Motor Company. Now, he's a block south of the shooting scene. They hear the shots. He saw the gunman run south on Patton, and he goes and calls the police. Murray Jackson was the dispatcher on Channel 1, and he received the alert from the, quote, citizen using the police radio. Now, this is T.F. Boley at 1:17. And Jackson was told that a policeman had been shot on 10th Street between Marcellus and Beckley. First thing Jackson does, he calls out. You can look this up on the police tapes, on the transcripts. The first thing Jackson does, he calls out for 78. Now, 78 was Tippett's call number. All right. So Jackson is then informed that it's car number 10, and he calls out for 78 two more times. And since we know that Mary Wright and Barbara Davis called the police immediately, and L.J. Lewis called the police almost immediately, and we know that Murray Jackson was unaware of the shooting until he received the alert from T.F. Boley at 1:17, it's obvious that Wright, Davis, and Lewis phoned in the shooting at a point in time just before T.F. Boley did. All right. So T.F. Boley, if these three witnesses, if they had called in the shooting much earlier, then Jackson would have already been aware of the shooting by the time Boley reported it to him. But we know Jackson was not aware of the shooting by the time Boley reported it to him over the police radio. All right. And Domingo Benavides says he sat there, after the killer went around the corner, he sat there for a second or two, and then he got out to try to notify the police operator. Well, he begins keying the mic at 1:15. So he waits for the killer to go around the corner of the house there on 10th and Patton, which is the Davis house. He sits there for a second or two. This is what he told Eddie Barker in the Warren Report in 1967, the TV show for CBS. And he says, I sat there for a second or two, and then he got out, went over to the body, and then he gets on the mic. Now, he begins keying the mic at 1:15. So he does not say he sat there for 7 minutes, which is what has to happen if the shooting occurred at 1:08 or some absurd timeline that a lot of conspiracy advocates like to come up with. Ted Calloway said he heard the shots, and he ran to the sidewalk on Patton, looked up the street. He saw William Scoggins hiding, behind his cab, and he saw Oswald jump the hedges there at the corner of the Davis yard and cross Patton and make his way south on Patton towards Calloway's position. And this is when Calloway hollers out. Calloway testified that Oswald was running and he was holding a gun, and then he saw Oswald head west on Jefferson. So Calloway stood there at his position on the sidewalk, and he saw Oswald travel the complete length of that one block down Patton from 10th to Jefferson. And then he saw Oswald head west on Jefferson. And then Calloway then made a good hard run. That's his words, a good hard run up to the corner of 10th and Patton. He noticed the patrol car. He went over to it, and he saw Tippett lying dead in the street. And he basically helps load the body in the ambulance, and then he grabs the mic to report the shooting. So to recap, he hears this. This is Ted Calloway. He hears the shots. He runs to the sidewalk, watches the gunman run south on Patton, sees the gunman head west on Jefferson, and then he runs 2/3 of a block up to the scene, helps load the body, and reports the shooting to the dispatcher. Now, how much time passes from the time that Calloway hears the shots to the time he reports it on the police radio? Well, let's say it takes 2 minutes from the time that Oswald shoots Tippett to the time that he turns the corner onto Jefferson and begins heading west. Let's say it takes 2 minutes. It's a little over a block, and Oswald was running. And let's say it takes Calloway 1 minute to make his good hard run from his spot on the sidewalk on Patton up to the patrol car. And if all this is accurate, reasonably accurate, then Calloway's at the patrol car 3 minutes after the shots rang out. Let's add a minute for error, which, by the way, helps the conspiracy timeline, not mine. Let's add 1 minute for error, and we have Calloway at the patrol car using the police radio 4 minutes after the shots. And here's the thing. Calloway's report to the police dispatcher using Tippett's patrol car radio was at 119 to 120. Shooting took place 114 to 115.
Matt?
I'm here.
Do you agree with that, Matt? We were talking on the phone about a week and a half ago, and you kind of acknowledged at least that it's possible that the shooting could have taken place at 114, right?
Even if it, again, we're going back to the time.
I'm not talking about whether the shooter was Oswald. I'm just asking if it's possible the shooting took place at 114.
Yes, of course it's possible.
Okay. Then I'm ready. I'm ready for the next topic. Then that's good enough for me.
No, I can respond to that.
Go ahead.
No, I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to respond.
Well, we were trying to give you to respond. You didn't say anything. Go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm here. Okay. So yes, there is evidence that several minutes elapsed, and I gave some of the evidence last time in round one, but I since then I found some more. Okay, so as you mentioned, the closest witness, Donnie Benavides, he said that he stayed crouched down in his truck for, quote, a few minutes because he was afraid the man was going to come back and do more shooting. But as I said last time, let's throw him out. We still have a lot more evidence. Okay, Mrs. Barbara Davis, she testified that she called the police, went to Tippett's body, and stayed with it for 5 minutes. That's volume 3, page 345. Okay. Her sister-in-law, Virginia Davis, she told the FBI that she went to Tippett's body after Barbara called the police and, quote, a few minutes later after that. That's a CD 630F. Harold Russell, he told the FBI that after watching the killer run away, he walked 2 blocks to the crime scene, had a couple conversations with bystanders, and then, quote, 5 minutes later, the police arrived. That's volume 21, page 383. And then we have Jim Burt. He said that he and Bill Smith immediately ran to Tippett's body and, quote, stood there a few minutes. They then went down Patton Avenue to, of course, look for the killer. They searched the alley, of course. And then when they came back, the ambulance hadn't arrived yet. Okay, and you mentioned Calloway's actions indicate that, just a few minutes, that just, not much time passed at all. But the guy right next to him, Sam Ginyard, he testified that he and Ted Calloway, after watching the killer flee, went to the crime scene and, quote, stood there a while until the ambulance arrived. That's volume 7, page 398. So, yes, there is a 5 or 6 minutes that the body laid in the street, and that that's important because it really narrows Oswald's time to get there, and it narrows his time to get there. It does.
I just told you that Calloway is making his report to the police dispatcher 3 to 4 minutes after hearing the shots. And that report is made at 119 to 120.
Yeah, everyone agrees on that.
Okay, so then you have the shooting at what, 115?
Yeah, 109 to 114, yeah.
Okay, so no, that's not 109. Then you have Calloway, then you have it taken Calloway 10 minutes to get on Tippett's patrol car radio after hearing the shots.
He said,
it didn't take him 10 minutes.
The guy next to him said that we stood there a while until the ambulance. We stood there a while. Is 10 minutes?
You're speaking in general terms that are figures of speeches.
Is potential could 7, 8, 9, 10 minutes be? We stood there a while. Is that what we stood there a while could mean? Yes, but again, I just gave you all this evidence.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense for a police officer's body to be lying in the street for 7, 8, 9 minutes before someone decides to, 1, get on the patrol car radio to report it in, or 2, pick up their damn phone and call the operator to call the police to report the shooting. There's no way that these people waited. And I told you already.
I just gave you the evidence.
Mary Wright told Georgia Patricia Nash she did it immediately.
Yeah.
Barbara Davis said she went inside after Oswald cut across the yard and immediately called the police.
Yeah.
Not 7, 8, 9 minutes later.
Wait, you said, what was that second part you said?
Barbara Davis heard the shots, saw Oswald cutting across the yard, unloading the gun. She heard Markham screaming.
Yep.
She saw the police car, and then she immediately went inside and called the operator.
What are
This
you
is in
leaving
her
out there?
affidavit. This is in her affidavit.
What are you leaving out there? What are you not
you tell-
telling the listeners?
You tell me.
As I just said, she testified. She called the police. How long does that take? 2 minutes? 1 minute?
To call the police?
Yeah.
15 seconds?
And to call the police and tell them what happened.
25 seconds?
20. Okay. Okay. So as I said, she testified. She called the police. Let's just say a minute. Okay. Went to Tippett's body.
I'm not just going to say a minute. It doesn't take but a half a minute to call the police
This
and
is
tell them.
hypothetical. How do we know she got through right away?
Your entire case is hypothetical. You got multiple witnesses describing the guy the same. Differently, it's the same guy.
I read you the testimony, how she testified she called the police, went to Tippett's body, and stayed with it for, quote, 5 minutes. Yes, I just gave you that's testimony, volume 3, page 345, and all the other people I mentioned.
Matt, since we know that Mary Wright and Barbara Davis called the police immediately,
Yeah.
and we know that Murray Jackson was unaware of the shooting until he received the alert from Boley on the police radio at 117, it's obvious that Wright and Davis called the police just before Boley got on the radio to report the shooting.
Do you know how quickly they were connected they got through? Until they got through?
I'm not going to sit here and let you tell me that it took 7 or 8 or 9 minutes for that to happen.
I'm not saying it took 7, 8, or 9 minutes.
Well, why do you think it would have taken longer than 30 seconds?
Okay, so what we're talking about is, okay, let's say 30 seconds. Let's say she called the police, 30 seconds, went to Tippett's body, that takes 30 seconds, and stayed with it for 5 minutes. So that's 6 minutes, and the ambulance hasn't even arrived yet.
The ambulance got there, Matt, at 119. She didn't stay there for 6 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever she said. It was a figure of speech.
No one disagrees that it was 118, 119. I just gave you all the evidence that he lied in the street for several minutes, and that narrows Oswald's time to walk there, as we said in our first debate.
You haven't addressed the fact that Callaway is reporting the shooting 3 to 4 minutes after the shots rang out, and he did this at 119 to 120.
So all we know is it was at 119, 120.
That Callaway made his report on Tippett's radio,
Yeah.
correct?
And the guy next to him, as I said, I keep having to repeat myself, Sam Gignard.
I'm not talking about. See, you're talking about people's. You're talking about a figure of speech. I'm talking about the police case.
Figure of speech. See, every time I give evidence, Bill says, "Oh, it's a figure of speech," or witnesses aren't reliable.
Hey, Matt, if you would show up with something besides figure of speeches, then I wouldn't have to say it.
Sworn testimony. Again, he said, "Quote."
It doesn't matter whether it's a sworn testimony; it's still a figure of speech. People give figure of speeches when they're testifying.
Quote, "We stood there a while until the ambulance arrived." Volume 7, page 398.
What does a while mean? How do you know what a while means to Ginyard, whoever it was that you're quoting right now? How do you know what a while means?
Well, kind of getting circular again.
It's not circular, Chris. It's not circular. Yep. We're talking about the evidence.
You repeated it, but you keep repeating the same thing over and over and over.
Who?
Listening to it.
Who?
Well, the bottom line is, just to get this moving on, the bottom line is that Ted Callaway made his report on the police radio 119 to 120, and I just described for you his actions, and it took him no more than 3 to 4 minutes to do all that. Certainly didn't take 9 minutes or 10 minutes even for the shooting to occur too early for Oswald to have been there. Callaway alone tells you the shooting took place about, I'm not saying he says this literally, but Callaway's actions alone tell you the shooting took place 1:15-ish. Callaway didn't say I hung around for 10 minutes before I got on the radio. He tells you what he did.
Sam,
and all you got to do is play it out in your head.
The guy read, we stood there a while. We stood there a while until the ambulance.
Again with your figure of speeches. Stop using figure of speeches. I'm using actual literal police tape timelines.
I am reading to you sworn testimony. Do you not like testimony?
Because it's sworn testimony doesn't mean it's still not a figure of speech. A while. You're saying he stood there a while. I'm telling you, Callaway was on the police tape at 119.
Guys, talking over each other.